Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back to the show. We are joined live now here with our friend Tim Mikhelashvili. We are joined by the CEO and co-founder, again, of Amedea Pharma from Westbury, New York, from Long Island, a local guy like myself. I'm from out in Suffolk County. Pleasure to have you here to talk today about all these performance analytics and, of course, the organizational changes that you help with. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners to start? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely, Jill. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity because I've watched your interviews and the energy that you bring is just amazing. It's unparalleled. And so I'm just honored to be on that list of all of the amazing individuals that you've interviewed before.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you because you inspire as well in the medical affair business. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Sure, I'm trying to. I'm doing my best to do that, to inspire. Exactly. So I've spent 18 years working in the medical division of the pharma industry. Both global companies such as AstraZeneca, Sanofi, Aventis, as well as startups, those that grew to become the largest in their field in gastroenterology in the world, as well as others that failed despite having the best product in next generation medications. And so I've recognized throughout my career that medical affairs activities are intended to improve healthcare quality, not generate revenue. And so their contributions are difficult to analyze and measure. So I formed this company, Amedea Pharma, in order to help life science organizations express their activities and contributions using words and numbers that people can touch and translate rather than pictures alone, which leave a lot to interpretation. And so I merge metrics with organizational culture because I've studied organizational culture in the last 4 years. And so I formed a team of organizational change researchers from MIT, even Olympians, performance coaches, commercial franchise leaders, as well as biostatisticians to close that gap and to help organizations transform data into behaviors.
Beautiful. Wow. This is amazing what you do, and you've accomplished so much. So congratulations on that. And just if you don't mind, could you give us a little bit of your background? Where did you grow up and what brought you into the pharma field? How did this all start?
Sure. As you can guess from my last name, which I thank you for pronouncing it so well, I come from the Republic of Georgia.
Mikhelashvili, yes.
Mikhelashvili, yes, perfect. So I was born in the Republic of Georgia in the Caucasus Mountains, which is the birthplace of wine, by the way.
Yay!
I don't say it's the best wine necessarily. Maybe for me it is, but it's the oldest. So very old wine drinking culture. And so I came here about 33 years ago. I live in New York now most of my life, so I consider myself a New Yorker. And when I was in pharmacy school, I was in New Orleans, where we didn't have much exposure to careers in the pharmaceutical industry. I wanted to be involved in healthcare because of my family, where they're teachers, professors, and physicians for the most part. And so I had seen our dean of our university, who had pursued a career in the industry, and he had just inspired me through his lecture. And at that time, there were many products, medications that were recalled after they had come onto the market. And as a pharmacist, I thought that was unacceptable. So I wanted to come into the industry and to prevent those kind of safety, issues and adverse events, and help improve healthcare continuity, healthcare quality, and innovation, which is something that I've been driven by my entire life. Innovation and competition as well, as you can get.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, that's why you're doing so well. Let's just remind our listeners the best form of contacts. How can we reach you? Could you give us the website, phone number, any form of contact that's available?
Sure. So my phone number is 718-865-6093. The website is amedeapharma.com, AMEDEAPHARMA.com. I'm also a host of the All Out Coach podcast. So you can find me across all podcast platforms. All Out Coach, all one word, ALLOUTCOACH.
So you're combining analytics with management consulting. You're doing, I don't know how you're doing all of it. There's so much to your company, to your firm. And I know we're going to get into a little bit about the change of its culture and communication in a sense. We want to
Sure.
talk more about the design metrics, of course, and we'll talk about that company culture as well when you're
Sure.
ready. I do have so many notes here, so I'm going to let you
Sure.
take the reins. And also, if anyone has any questions, wants to call in, they can. 631-317-1291, 631-317-1291. Feel free to give us a call and chat with Tim live here today.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Jill, so, I know I sent you a lot of notes, and one of the things that, I've noticed from, our industry and in business in general is that we are so busy with trying to meet our goals, our performance goals, our strategy, and plan it, that we don't take the time to look at our incentives, our awards, recognizing people, and also the workflow and the expectations that we create ourselves.
Yeah.
Most of our attention is spent externally, pointed externally. How can I deliver such and such number of sales or medications, right? But I think, my hypothesis, my observations are that in order to address those underlying root causes of performance or engagement problems, you need to look more internally, be a little bit more introspective. And organizations are very busy in my industry, in pharma, and in other industries as well. I concentrate on life sciences by bringing in a lot of those modern organizational research and data science principles into medical affairs, in being more introspective. And so that's why I think you need companies, agencies such as mine, such as others, in order to tie, more directly performance or expectations to the workflow, to your goals, which is not so easy to do in a medical field, where I'm surrounded by people who are purpose driven. They have all taken that oath, the Hippocratic oath, never to do any harm, right? Not to do.
Uh-huh.
Right? So the question of the purpose is not there, but it's what the problem is, knowing where you stand, and receiving feedback more often.
Yeah.
So the advantages of really working with Amedea Pharma and the benefits are to, number one, improve your performance by continuous feedback, continuous, more real-time feedback, changing how you share insights, business insights, medical insights across different functions, departments, decreasing that interdepartmental rivalry, right? Tying that workflow and engagement into how you communicate.
Yeah.
You more channels to communicate, maybe digitally.
Yeah.
Right? First, in my function, to go live on LinkedIn, for example, and I was criticized for it at one of my startups as well, despite creating a lot of value, like $40 million within 4 hours, because of what we generated in my company, at our company, which was first called a waste of time, right? So changing conventional norms of communication, I think, helps improve our performance, can improve your performance.
You got to take that risk, right? In your business, in your field, you're taking lots of risks, and some fail, some succeed, but it's that gamble you take, and that's what brings you, the great income, like you just mentioned, that much money within a certain amount of minutes, and people had doubts about you, and unbelievable. You are so motivated. I know your parents really inspired you too at a young age, let alone those professors, but wow, you are super smart to talk to and really inspiring to so many people. And if you're just tuning in now during the broadcast, I just want to remind everyone who we're talking to here, if you go to AmedeaPharma.com, you can find out more information. It's AMEDEAPHARMA. If you want to reach out there right on the website, you can reach Tim directly. And again, his phone number is 718-865-6093, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. All right, let's continue.
Okay. So let's, second point, probably second benefit, right, advantage there, is improving engagement. And how do you do that? Well, by distributing accountability more evenly throughout your organization, up, down, and across the entire company. And I do that through the medical productivity index that we've created. where you evaluate that and distribute that accountability both internally and externally with all your external stakeholders,
Yeah.
As well as rewarding performance, technical performance, and behavior equally at 50% each, which is somewhat new and revolutionary, right? Because most organizations separate metrics
Yeah.
from culture, right? But all of the latest data from global research from McKinsey that I've seen is shows that only 1 out of 5 employees currently are engaged or feel that their company culture is actually played out in the real world, right? So I've at our company, we've realized that it's difficult to practice what you preach, and so you end up practicing what you play instead. So in a sense, by introducing competition more explicitly, we are increasing engagement, right, through competition, which means that you have to dispel those myths that metrics mean more competition. No, I think it's the wrong metrics or the lack thereof that lead to wrong competition, which is unhealthy when it's implicit, right? Because all of us, we compete for talent, for resources, for technology,
Yeah.
right? Regardless in this competitive environment. But when we do it in a sportsmanship method, right, in a sport where we hold some of the high performers accountable, those who, let's say, use performance enhancing steroids, for example, in the sports analogy, but at work, then you eliminate some of the cynics who are proud of and they're passionate about the nature of their work, but they don't believe in how they're evaluated, right? And so we're increasing the engagement through distributing accountability by decreasing the intersections between different companies. So I've created a metrics workbook, which is a communication playbook, because it's important to also recognize when you communicate those metrics, and do you do it transparently? Do you do it only with your department, with others, right? Because I've learned from some of the leaders in organizational change, Ron Carucci from Harvard Business Review, Tiffany Bova, who's a chief growth evangelist at salesforce.com, who are now demonstrating and generating a lot of evidence to show that product success is only 20% dependent on its attributes. 80% of its success is dependent on the experience that you create, right? So the customer experience and the employee experience. Right. And so I think any discussion regarding metrics and crunching those numbers is great, right? But you have to somehow relate them to how they ultimately lead to changes in behavior, right? And so the first part is really the culture. Second is designing the types of metrics and contests that employees, your competitors, will want to participate, not have to only. And then the third approach that we have at Amedea Pharma is creating learning and development communities, right? Branded learning and development communities in which people share their emotions as well. They reshare what they learn, because that's what ultimately leads to innovation as you go from competition to collaboration to innovation. Because nowadays organizations tend to compete a lot, but they also collaborate with their competitors. They form lots of partnerships, startups, right? There's lots of mergers and acquisitions in my field, lots of reorganizations. But ultimately, the innovation happens when you start to be a little bit daring and share information and teach and learn and teach. So if you can find a way to learn and teach information and to evaluate how, to what extent does your employee learn and teach, rather than are they working alone is not enough. You need to be able to demonstrate if they're learning and teaching as well. And so that's really what, ultimately what I incorporated into this philosophy that our company offers, which combines sportsmanship with the scientific method, right? Because I think regardless of whether or not you're a sports athlete or you're a scientist, regardless of your background, those two are the most productive mindsets, such that, even someone, let's say, who's a janitor, when they have that mindset in your culture, they'll look for that best detergent to clean with, right? In the offices, for example. Right. And so that, ultimately I summed all of these elements into a first ever Innovation Olympics event that my company organized just recently, Jill, and it was a huge success. It was a long awaited type of event that was in my mind for many years, because the Olympics is something that's timeless, and it values and rewards sportsmanship, right, to the same extent as performance as well. But in our pharma industry, imagine how competitive it is, where intellectual property is of utmost concern. Yet I was so glad to see a lot of innovative companies such as Takeda, Roche, Astellas participate and share their new ideas, keep their intellectual property, but enhance their ideas, because it was a month-long event. And we had expert judges, all-star expert judges from 12 different companies as well, who evaluated them, and they provided real-time feedback, and we did voting as well. So people knew at every single time where they stood, which is very rare in a medical, unlike in a sales roles, right? In sales, everyone knows how many prescriptions their physicians wrote, right, every week, and that motivates them.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to merge some of that kind of competition into the medical field, and I realize that metrics are simply indices. They're an estimate of the relationship between an activity and an outcome. Yet you need them in the same way as you need, let's say, miles, sky miles, right? Which relate the loyalty you have to a particular company, right? To how often and how far you fly through these points, right? But it ultimately still inspires you, not just measures those miles, but inspires you to fly more in order to earn that free ticket.
True.
So, right?
It does. And also just want to point out on your website, I know there's a great overview of you and your company. It's on YouTube. There's a link on the website, which I think could help our listeners out as well. Also, you offer there's some free type of workbook on there. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a metrics workbook. It's a 29-page workbook that helps organizations assess and evaluate whether or not they're measuring their activities in a way that will inspire future behaviors, that will actually translate into real world behaviors. So it includes a lot of case studies from business management, not just pharma alone, right? From top business executives who've been role models in how to change organizations, and such as W.L. Gore and Associates, Bill Gore, Paul Polman from Unilever. And I'm bringing that business research into pharma, into the medical field. And so you can score your own metrics as well. So there's a scoring algorithm, and also various different ways to measure behaviors, engagement, that have been validated through research, through thousands of employees as well. And considerations of the different elements of metrics, the tiebreakers, the rules, who are the judges, what's the timing, right? What's the audience of the metrics or that you're communicating with your teams. So it can be customized to different fields as well. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me via that link on my website.
Awesome. Awesome. And let's remind everyone all forms of contact for you once again.
Sure. So my cell phone is 718-865-6093. My email is timmik, TIMMIK, at Amedea Pharma, AMEDEAPHARMA.com. And also I'm known as the All Out Coach across Instagram, and on the podcast, because I host this podcast where I interview a lot of globally renowned organizational change leaders, executives in IT, in pharma, mentors, leaders. The goal of the podcast is to help transcend differences between people and extend their boundaries of their roles and responsibilities. I've led culture initiatives for startups before. And I've seen some of the challenges where I've talked about look, we have to address the what's in it for me, for employees. And there was a silence, right? You could hear a pin drop, but all the research shows that it's the culture of communication that is ultimately central to our performance as a company, as an organization, right? And you need to start internally as well. In order to demonstrate customer experience, first you cannot surpass or jump over the employee experience. And so the Olympics was one way to kind of change our norms of how we share ideas, how we debate, how we provide performance feedback, and also created an experience that was shared, like a shared experience and excitement in a time of uncertainty right now, in a time of crisis also somewhat, right? Inflation in our industry. Yet I was so glad that so many, participated. And so I would love to do the same for your company. So feel free to reach out to me in your organization. If you're connected with healthcare, with life sciences, or if you're running a smaller business and you want to integrate some of these modern organizational change data and data science principles, you can make your strategy more predictable, right? And your forecast more predictable when you use some of these approaches, which are, again, culture, metrics, and L&D, learning and development.
Perfect. I know, yeah, I was going to ask you about L&D if you wanted to talk more about that and the importance of creating that, I should say, with community and mentorship as well.
Yeah, I'm the chair of the mentorship program at the Premier Medical Affairs Professional Society, which is a global volunteer nonprofit society, which now numbers almost 10,000 professionals across pharma. And I joined about 4 years ago, and I wanted to interview them for my podcast, but they told me, look, you're so passionate about mentorship. Why don't you just start our mentorship program?
There you go. Wow. Another thing you got into, Tim.
Yeah, and so I'm volunteering. So that's completely
Yeah.
voluntary work that I do, and it's absolutely fulfilling. So L&D, again, is something that helps you share not just words with each other at work, not just information and learn from each other, but also share emotions ultimately, right? Because it's when you learn something that you feel like you're making some progress, right? And when you teach what you learn, that's where you increase your legacy ultimately,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that's the inspiration for the learning and I think, Jill, I will add one thing. I don't know if you agree with this, but I think nowadays there's no time better than today to learn more. And there's no the exposure that we have to the ways, the opportunities to learn through various different channels of communication has never been greater.
Now, how did the pandemic affect you and your businesses? I mean, everyone went through so much and the anxiety and the loss and the stress, but there was a lot of growth that has come out of it. Could I just ask you about that, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Well, I realized, I think that it accelerated
Yeah.
exploring various channels of communication. For me personally, I mean, this office here that you see, this became a studio. I started to call it a studio, okay, with my colleagues as well. I never thought that I'd be doing videos, for example, okay? I don't have the background you have as a broadcaster and interviewer, but I thought that it was important to spread ideas, right? So in whichever means or methods it was possible to do. So in the startups that I was working in throughout the pandemic, for example, we launched a new product, which is not easy to do for a pharma company.
Yeah.
But the uptake was not as fast as it could have been, for example, right? And so we learned that, look, the medical team was in place before the commercial team. So we created a lot of those initial relationships that were instrumental to the business. However, because of the launch, once then you have a commercial sales force, then you had some kind of interdepartmental issues during the pandemic because of being virtual that created some issues, right? And when you think about it, pandemic I think helped us realize that it's important to be not politically correct, but globally correct. The perception is reality is kind of old now, right? Because reality is more exposed than ever before to data, right? And so it's life is short, things are rough, right? Stakes are high, but our dialogue is too precious for us to waste on pettiness. And I think that's what the pandemic taught us.
Got it. Well, let me ask you also, we're almost out of time. You only have 2 minutes left in the show. My goodness, that went quick. What else do you want to share before we have to go, Tim? Wow.
What I'll say is that I shared a lot of information here. What's important to consider, I think, is that innovation is critical today in any field, and you become more creative and more innovative when you are able to merge and integrate two different fields that do not often interact with each other. Right. So this is why I'm learning from Olympians who are my advisors, right? Or business or commercial leaders and executives as well. And so I want to inspire all of you who are listening to also look introspectively and invite diversity of ideas, transcend differences between you and your colleagues, your others. And create momentum regardless of uncertainty, pandemic, be it the crisis, inflation, what have you. Try to create momentum. And I think that begins with giving yourself permission to spread ideas that matter.
Fantastic.
Right? And visualizing a finish and success as a sports athlete would.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time here today. Would you mind sharing again the best ways our listeners can reach out? I know you can go to the website and also book a 15-minute conversation with you as well. I saw that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to do that. AmedeaPharma.com. You can count on us to bring innovation in our space in business. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take ideas seriously. Okay, so AmedeaPharma.com, AMEDEAPHARMA.com. It's an analytics company that helps you analyze yourself, your teams, and your competition with the sports and scientific method.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Pleasure getting to know you today. Thank you to all of our listeners for being here as well. And again, my fellow Long Island friend, looking forward to the next time we speak again. Have a great day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.